If it wants to, again, just before we move on to the next question, please.
Jeremy will no doubt, and I think he did a good job earlier on of explaining what he has done and what he hasn't done, and what his position in this, and I think he's been very clear and very open about that. What I can say is that the MRWS process has not yet, and has not at the moment, identified any potential sites, and therefore for the process to start seeking the views of communities associated with that site isn't possible. Now I know there's a perception.
We're not talking about...
I'll come back to you in a second.
Well, I just needed to respond to one thing that's been stated. I mean, one thing is, thank you for promoting me to a professor, but I'm actually still only a doctor. The other thing is, we know an awful lot about the geology of certain areas in Cumbria. We do not know a lot about the geology of Cumbria as a whole. There are large areas of Cumbria we do not know what the geology is specifically.
That is absolutely untrue. It's a classical study area, it's been studied for 200 years. Yes. There is a vast amount of data. Frankly, the NIREX study covered 65 by 60 kilometres, including some offshore. Ennerdale was covered by that, Eskdale was covered by that, and there was extensive evidence up in the Solway Plain, which was not covered by NIREX, but that was covered by oil exploration drilling. So we know a vast amount about it. Looking there, frankly, is ridiculous.
We know elements of areas of West Cumbria, yes, it has been studied. Specific parts of it have been studied in great detail. You yourself in your presentation explained large parts of the Ennerdale granite, large parts of the Eskdale granite cannot and have not been investigated by people simply because they're covered in a bog. You cannot get visual access, you cannot see what's going on there. Yes, you've got remote methods, you have data, you have information, but some of that information is not available to the general public at this stage.
So are you suggesting we should start drilling the Ennerdale granite to find out?
No. What I'm suggesting, and this is in response to the question that came, the first question that was made, of a scientific and methodological study, of which the next part of that scientific and methodological study, whether you agree with the right of withdrawal or not, is stage 4, as stated in the white paper. That is the next...
Dr. Dillon, at the Ennerdale public meeting, you were asked some questions by Stephen, Harry and myself, and the questions, you answered them eventually, and you said that you'd identified these rock volumes. Harry, sitting to my left, asked you several times, and eventually the chairman allowed Harry to put the question to you about your opinion with regard to these rock volumes, which are sites, of course, they're not sites, these rock volumes, and you were asked, what, in your professional opinion, what the chances were of these rock volumes being suitable. And I think you said low.
Yes.
And we've talked about that again tonight.
Yeah.
You've reconfirmed to me that those rock volumes, in your opinion, the potential for them is actually low. So we both between us wonder why this process is still in place when there's only low potential.
It's political expediency
for the sites you've identified, and there doesn't appear to be a plan B. And as you said to me, no commercial operation will go down this route. That wouldn't make any sense. If it's only got low potential, you'd look elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for that statement. Let's move the debate back to the floor, because I know there's a lot of people in here who want to ask.
Margaret Flott, above Derwent Parish Council, and then I think we've met before. Thanks at least for coming on tonight. One of the questions I'd like to ask you is, I believe that all of the nuclear sites around the UK are actually owned or in some way managed or accountable to the NDA. Clearly there was a very damning report that came out from Sellafield recently, and over the past 10 years I believe there's been enormous concerns from the government over the state at Sellafield, particularly because it's got such complex nuclear waste there. I think they've got about 50% of the plutonium in the world at Sellafield. Please, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm right. Wrong, rather. A question to you, though, is do you think, based on the inspector's report, that the NDA have the capacity to not only make sure that Sellafield is safe for the whole of, I would say, the northwest of England, as well as embarking on a project that will take 20 to 25 years to get any kind of resolve whatsoever. Have you really got enough engineers, experts, and sufficient people to be able to embark on a greenfield site like a project like that, as well as making us safe?
Okay, can I just, I think you suggested that all the nuclear sites in the UK are owned by the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. That isn't actually the case. But what you might call the legacy sites are the old research sites. Well, so there's Sellafield, there's the research sites such as Dounreay, Harwell and Winfrith, and also the old Magnox power station sites, all but one of which are now shut down, are owned by the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. The advanced gas-cooled reactors that are still operating, which is all of them, and the pressurised water reactor at Sizewell B are owned by EDF. So they're not owned by the NDA, and the NDA isn't responsible for them. I hadn't heard the 50% of the world's plutonium is at Sellafield. I'd be slightly surprised, actually, given the nuclear arsenals that the United States in particular and Russia have got, and therefore the amount of plutonium they must have in those arsenals, if it was as high as 50%, but I actually haven't heard the number. But there's no getting away from the fact there is a significant amount of separated plutonium, just over 100 tonnes, at Sellafield. So that is I'm not trying to pretend it's not a small amount. But to come to the core of your question about keeping Sellafield safe and doing all the other things that needs to be done, of course the NDA doesn't actually do any of that. Sellafield is run by a site licence company called Sellafield Limited, and that's owned and supported by its own parent body organisation called Nuclear Management Partners at Sellafield, which is a consortium of some leading UK and American companies, and they are the people who are doing the decommissioning at Sellafield, and even they aren't doing it all on their own. They're employing a lot of contractors and subcontractors to pull that in and help them, and that applies also to all the other NDA sites. They're owned by different organisations, and they employ a lot of contractors to help them.
Can I just ask a question on that? As the NDA, all of these third-party suppliers, are they not your responsibility?
Not directly, no, because the actual responsibility under the Nuclear Installations Act, the licensees under the Nuclear Installations Act are the site licence companies, such as Sellafield Limited. So in law, because they're running licensed sites, they are responsible for the safety of their sites. There's actually a provision in their contract with the NDA, because the NDA gives them money, which actually says if they've got to do something in the interest of safety, they're entitled to do it, and then the NDA will pay them. So it's not as if the NDA can constrain them, but they are actually responsible. They're responsible for employing the contractors that they need to enable them to do that job, and they're responsible for the performance of those contractors. And that's a very important part of the relationship between the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority.
Thanks, Alan, for answering that question very exhaustively.
Keith, can I just answer that? That is in Piranha. They are the client, basically, of Sellafield Limited. So ultimately, they are responsible for what is or isn't done at Sellafield and the rest of the NDA estate, despite what Alan said. Yes, there are legal entities that are there, but those legal entities are ultimately accountable to and responsible to the NDA. So the NDA, at the end of the day, is responsible for everything. And when things go wrong at Sellafield, it's very handy to be able to say, it's nothing to do with us. Well, sorry, it is. Because they're paying them, they've got a contract, they should be making sure that Sellafield are doing what they're supposed to do. And that's the crux of the issue.
Thanks very much. Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Next question, please.
My question concerns the issues of trust and the right of withdrawal that has been referred to on a number of occasions this evening. I took up the cudgel of approaching various county councillors and district councillors who in 19 days determine our future. And as part of the response that I received, I was sent a copy of a letter that had been sent by the leader of Cumbria County Council, Eddie Martin, to the Right Reverend Bishop James Newcombe. That letter was dated the 12th of October. It followed, of course, the MRWS final report as it was described, which was dated in August 2012. Following that report, and I will come to, in a moment, to the letter that is referred to there from the Minister of Energy, Eddie Martin writes as follows: "You are quite right in advocating a cautious approach in whether or not Cumbria should continue to take part in the search for a geological disposal facility. That is precisely my and my colleagues' approach, and why I have invoked the pause in the process. This is the reason why we are here, and that stage 4 has not already been reached, which was suggested by the previous minister, should any of the parties involved wish for further clarification or could not agree." The next bit is vital. "At this stage, we cannot agree to forge ahead with the project without significant reassurances from government and the government acceding to certain fundamental conditions in order to protect Cumbrian people. Chief amongst many is the statutory right to unilaterally withdraw from the process if we are dissatisfied for any reason. No such statutory right currently exists." The MRWS report referred to a letter that had been sent by the Minister of Energy dated the 12th of July of 2012. On the back of that letter, the MRWS, in effect, backed a continuation of the process to stage 4. This is the letter that the Minister of Energy then wrote, or the relevant part of it. It is very short. "I am happy to make a commitment to see this objective delivered such that by the end of stage 4 of the MRWS process, government will have decided what mechanisms it will use to put subsequent aspects of the MRWS process," here it comes, "including the right of withdrawal, planning, inventory change, control, and reaching agreements on community benefits, on a clear, transparent, and more certain path, and to have," and I quote, "started the steps to put these in place. These mechanisms should be legally binding, although we should not rule out other means at this stage. They should be legally binding, provided they are found to be acceptable to both government and the decision-making bodies in due course." My question to all members on the stage, all panel members, is this: can anybody at this stage, and anybody in this room indeed, point to any unequivocal right to withdraw that would satisfy Eddie Martin according to his wording of his letter to Bishop James Newcombe? The statutory right to unilaterally withdraw from the process if we are dissatisfied for any reason.
Well, I think you know what my answer is going to be, and I agree with you that there isn't such a right of withdrawal. We were told, I'm sure, at the Airedale meeting that a letter was awaited from the government, weren't we? Who told us that? Somebody said that it's with the lawyers at the moment. So you'd expect some weasel words pretty soon, I would have thought, if they haven't come out. But as to amounting to a statutory right of withdrawal, well, clearly there can't be. You need legislation for that. And we've got a decision on the 30th of January. So the answer, you're right, there isn't a right to withdrawal at the moment. Not.
Said on Wednesday night in Edinburgh that she was still awaiting confirmation of that, so she still hasn't got.
Oh yeah, you know, there's some highly paid lawyer in London trying to think of the right words as we speak, probably charging £1,500 an hour on a Friday night for thinking about it. Maybe, who knows? But they'll get something, but it won't amount to a statutory right to withdrawal.
Okay, another question from